Of Coffee Hour. My name is Paul Abernathy. Thanks for joining me this morning on a Monday morning, January 13th, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, whatever time it may be your time. Thanks for joining me here for this morning episode. Again, before we do anything, I'd just like to say to everybody, shout out and do me a favor, let me know who you are and where you're from. I'd love to see where everybody's listening from. And I will say all of these episodes will be available over on Fast Tracks Tube as well in its own series. So we're getting that set up to get moved as well. So in case you miss it, of course, if you're here, you're not missing it. But if you're watching this in a snippet of it, maybe on another platform, then we'll make it available over on Fast Tracks Tube. That's for sure. We're also not streaming today to LinkedIn. Okay, so we slowly are removing the different streams that we send to, but today we chose not to do it to LinkedIn today. But I encourage more people to start watching over on our own proprietary platform over on Fast Tracks Tube and give us some feedback, let you know how it's going, how's it working, things like that. We encourage you to watch it over there. If it's having an issue, let us know, send us an email. And we can make sure that our developers are on top of it. Okay. In fact, for example, I'm streaming over there, and it looks like it is just spinning and not loading as well. So again, that's the kind of things that we want to know about. Good morning. Let's see some shout outs here. Good morning, Paul, joining from down in Houston. Thanks for joining me, Paul. TJ, Alabama, Southern Alabama. Thank you, sir. Thanks for being here. Jay, good morning from Florida. Representing the southern part of the country where I was the NEMA rep. So I'm all good with that. Frank, good morning. Thanks for joining. Alex is joining us from eastern Wisconsin, chilly Wisconsin. And good morning, Los Angeles. Frank's out on the West Coast, keeping it real out on the West Coast. Hopefully you are nowhere near any of that fires or anything of that kind of crazy stuff. So it is it's a terrible thing out there on the West Coast. That is terrible. Let's see here. Who we got? Who else we got here this morning? We got Red Dog joining us again, California. It's all well with me, my friend. Hope it's all well with you. And, of course, we got Dan from Chicago. And Frank's all settled in. Okay, good deal. Let's see here real quick. Let me see if I can get... there we go. Cool deal. All right. Glad everybody's doing okay and ready to get the week started, make a little money. Whether you work for yourself or you work for somebody else, it's all the same thing. Make a little money. Grow your business, spread your name, all that type of stuff. Alberto from Ohio. Thanks for joining. All right. So it looks like it's having a little problem over on Fast Tracks Tube. So again, I'll have to figure out what's going on with that. And again, the developers will say that I'm full of crap, but I'm looking right at it, and it is not loading. So, hey, we still have YouTube, right? While we work out the bugs. All right, today's episode, we're going to be talking about the change for 2023 that had to do with the island and peninsula countertops in the kitchen and where you can have the receptacle serving that island or peninsular. And the reason we're doing that today is, one, it was requested, and I told you I like to do requests. When people request something, I like to try to honor that. And two, it is a change that's going to take place in the 2026. So for all the people that did not like, and I was one of them, that did not like what took place in 2023, of course, we'll look at it. And we'll even maybe go look at 2020 and see the change. The folks that did not like the 2023, may like the outcome of the 2026, but it's not going to be what we all wanted, right? The common sense approach to it. So we'll kind of look at that and break it down. Of course, if you have any questions on any of this, feel free to let me know in the comments, and I'm more than happy to break anything down. If you have any questions about anything else, feel free to let me know, and I will do my best to do that as well. Before I do get started, I do want to show everybody. So this is my desktop. If you download our app on your phone, which is basically just a link, it's going to look like the one in the lower right here. This one by my finger. Okay, that's our little genie, if you will. And you click on it, and it's going to bring up here. So I just happen to have it already defaulted. So there you go. It's going to bring up this mobile app. All right, here you can watch, and I'm sorry about the pixeling out. Here you can look at our podcast. You can listen. You can listen to our podcast, watch videos on Fast Tracks Tube, Coffee Hour. So you can even get Coffee Hour directly from here, and it will load. And you see what it's doing is this is what I'm noticing that it is doing here. So obviously our player with wherever it goes up is having issues. And so, of course, I always ask, they say, well, what's going on with it? And then I don't know how to tell them that. I just show them that and say, well, that's what it's doing. It's just spinning. It ain't doing anything. So it tells me it's something wrong with their service. So, but anyway, the point is usually it'll be back and you will be able to watch it right there. And it just makes it easy to be able to watch it on your phone. But regardless of that, there's so many other features here. So again, make sure it moves, and make sure you just get the mobile app. It's free. In fact, our latest blog is over there where we did a really deep dive into MC cable, AC cable, and bundling. Okay, so make sure you check that out. Now, as far as the app goes, you don't get it at the App Store. You just go to our website and get it. We don't believe in the App Store. Same thing that's going to happen to TikTok. It's just going to disappear from the App Store. I'm not into those app stores. We do our own, and since it's web-based, we link it straight from our website. So all you do is go to our website, fasttracksystem.com, go to the navigation. You'll see a link for mobile app. You will click on it if you're on your phone, and she'll get all loaded up on your phone, and you just answer yes, and it'll be good. Okay. What do we got? Good morning, Eric. Oh, Eric knows how to get me going in the morning, and that one could get me going. But you're absolutely right. When your fire hydrants are empty and you don't divert all that water from the mountain and all that melt off, and you start diverting it and you send it to the ocean, you're going to have problems when you have a real fire. So maybe people will actually wake up there. Okay. Maybe we'll wake up. All right, Anthony's ragging on Eric this morning. There you go. That's what I like to see. Everybody back and forth. Okay, Alberto, this is live, but it will be recorded. It will be over on Fast Tracks Tube, and it will, for a limited time, be recorded and played here on YouTube as well until we move it over. Everything eventually moves over to Fast Tracks Tube. Okay. All right. So, anybody got any open topics they want to talk about this morning before I get into today's thing? It's going to be pretty quick, but if you got something you want to chat about, please, this is for y'all in the morning. This is our coffee time. This is our opportunity to connect and, share some stories, whatever you want to talk about, and love to chat about just about anything, except for the wildfire or the fires in California. I don't know what the deal is with that. Okay. Anthony says, are you going to the 22? I don't know what the 22 is. There's only the 2020 NEC, then it's the 2023 NEC. I had somebody send me that this morning, say something about the 2022, and I don't even know, not about the California, that type of thing. So I don't know what that means. Am I going to the 2025 Expo? I'm not sure what Expo it is, but chances are no. If Encore ain't going, I'm not going. So, all right, let's see here. Okay, let's get into today's lesson, if you will. So here's what we're looking at. So what are we talking about? So we're talking about you have an island, in your kitchen or a peninsular. And the peninsula is connected to a perpendicular wall, right? And it's sticking out, okay? And in that scenario, in the past, we're required to have a receptacle. Now, for years, it was any 24 by 12 inch dimension requires a receptacle in an island and a peninsula. And then it went to square footage, right? First 9 square feet, you had to have one. And each additional 18 square feet, you had to have another one, right? So we changed through the years. And the reason it was a change, that all these changes, was because it was always argued that there just wasn't enough receptacles at the island and peninsula. So the people were using things like extension cords. Maybe a good example of that might be during the holidays when there's not enough room. And so people would put crock pots or warmers or whatever over on the island so that it was more central for everybody to be able to utilize it. And then, of course, you had those cords and people would pull off the cords, right? So that became, so the IAEI, which is International Association of Electrical Inspectors, they changed their name to something, which is a stupid move in my opinion. But at any rate, because they tried to broaden it out like it would bring in more membership, and that ain't going to happen. Changing the name's not going to bring in more membership. Anyway, another different that. Everybody's having their own little side discussions going on. I'll see if I can answer this question. But so what happened was the code changed. And then for 2023, it was originally lobbied. There was reports that came out from the Consumer Products, from NFPA report that talked about all the children that were hurt and everybody was burned and all that kind of thing. And so they ended up getting it where they said, you know what, you don't have to put a receptacle outlet at the island or peninsula. But you have to have provisions there for if they add it in the future. So you had to have a way to get the power there, whether you put a raceway in, whether you ran it over and put it in a junction box underneath the island or peninsula. But you had to have the provisions there. The problem I had with that, and we're going to look at the code, but the problem I have with that, I'm giving you my commentary up front. The problem I have with that is that it encourages people to violate the code. And it puts the electrician in a funky position, because when the electrician ends up coming out there after the code is already passed and there's not one there, even if the circuit is there, okay, it's just a small appliance branch circuit extends over to the island and puts it in a box. Even though it's there, when the electrician comes and they go, and the owner wants a receptacle, they're going to look around and go, where the hell am I going to put this thing? And they're going to do what they always did. They're going to follow the old rules and put it below the countertop, not more than 12 inches down, okay, not under an overhang more than 6 inches from the base. They're going to do what they're always used to doing, but that would be a code violation. But chances are they may not get an inspection because they're adding it. The problem is now we're adding something that creates liability just not only for the homeowner, but for the electrician, because if something happens, and something could happen, I mean, Murphy's Law, right? Then what happens is it comes back, and then the poor electrician is like, dude, I put it where the customer wanted it. And then you've got some nerd like me come in there who gets hired, because people like me will take whoever's willing to pay the most to represent them. Yeah, it is what it is, about like a lawyer. And unless I really feel like something was wrong, I'm not gonna try to build code support around somebody that really did something wrong. It's just not what I'm gonna do. But you get the point. They come in and say, well, you know what, this electrician installed this, and this wouldn't have been per code. And the electrician's gonna say, hey, well, the homeowner wanted it, right? Well, that's not gonna go really well for the electrician. I'm just saying. But they're put in a situation where, what do? You want to put this receptacle in. So for those that don't know what we're talking about an island in your kitchen that doesn't have a receptacle outlet, and in the 2023 is not required to, even though you have to have the circuit there. So let me catch up real quick on some questions, and then I'll just go show you the code, and then we'll show you what's coming in 2026, and we'll look and see what may be different. Let's see here. Eric says, adding a circuit in a wall, how do you fasten the flex or NM? Do you have to do entire wall? No. If you're fishing it, you have an allowance in the code for fishing where it doesn't have to be secured. It's, so if you want to see that, we'll take you into the code and just show you that real quick since I do tell people to ask questions. So I might as well show it on the code on the screen. Okay. So let's go in. So that's going to be under your 334.30, right? So you're going to be under here. So it's the secure and supporting. Okay. So you've got all these rules. Then you've got this rule down here for unsupported cables. Okay. Here it says non-metallic sheet cables shall be permitted to be unsupported where the cable is fished between access points through concealed spaces in finished buildings, not new buildings. Okay. Finished buildings. Okay, so you're coming back and adding a receptacle. Let's say an example was you have one down low and you want to add it up high for a flat screen TV. Okay, well, they make kits for that. Okay, you're not going to put cords in the wall. You're going to use cables. And this is a good example. And it would impracticable means it's not something that we're going to say, go ahead and rip the sheetrock open. That's just not, that'd be pointless. Okay, that type of thing. Again, Frank, my app is not on any app store. You got to go to my website. Got to go to the website and get it. Maybe you hate my website, but go to fasttracksystem.com and you'll see in the navigation it says mobile app. That's the only place you can get it. It's not really an app that goes in your phone. It's a link to our web-based app so that we can change it and update it at all times, and you don't ever have to worry about downloading and reloading anything, that type of thing. Okay. So, all right. So Eric, does that answer your question? So this is the one you're going to be using. It'd be 334.30b, unsupported cables, and that's going to be that. Okay. Makes sense. All right. Okay. And Anthony says it could be concealed, but we like to give code. Okay. And let's see here. Russ followed up with that saying, yeah, you're allowed to fish those without strapping. Absolutely. And there you go. Russ throwed some code up in there. There you go. Let's see here. Yeah, Anthony talks about IAEI crumbling. Yes, I believe you're right as well. And I think the first mistake they did was getting in bed with manufacturers like Eaton and the people that maybe work for Eaton. I think that was the first sign of crumble, which means that they have nothing in their own association in order to be able to create and do things that they have to pull from a source that probably didn't charge them anything because they probably are willing to do it for free, that type of thing. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of things that I can tell you that's wrong with IAEI. Now, do I still support their effort? Absolutely. But as an organization, it's, from my opinion, I dropped my membership only because I just don't see it. I'd rather support NFPA, even, things like that. So anyway, let's see here. So Anthony says it's sad we can't really enforce what I hate that being, So in plan review, you're looking at it and they don't have to put a receptacle there. Okay. So let's go back real quick and look at the code and then we'll break it down and I'll show you what the code says and how it changed for those that are like, all right, how does this actually change? All right, so let's go on and get back to it. And let's see here. All right, so right here. So here's what it says. Now you see all this yellow. This is what happened in 2023. So it says receptacle outlets. Now you notice it says if installed. So that's important in the NEC because that's saying, look, you got to follow these rules if the receptacle outlet is actually installed. Nothing's mandating that it be installed, right? It is saying if it is installed, okay? All right, so in that case, it says if it's installed to serve an island or peninsula countertop or work surface, it says it shall be installed in accordance with 210.52C3. Of course, that's right here. It says if a receptacle outlet is not provided, because you're choosing to not put one now at the island or peninsula, to serve the island or peninsula countertop or work surface, provisions shall be provided at the island or peninsula for future addition of a receptacle outlet to serve the island or peninsula countertop or work surface. So what it's saying is, look, if you don't put one, then you have to provide provisions there to do it, okay? If you don't put one, okay? If you do put one, then you have to follow the location rules, right? That's basically what it's saying. Now, when it talks about having a provision there, again, that could be you putting a junction box underneath there. That could be you putting a raceway from a location where you can get to the circuits, running the raceway over and a raceway up. That could be considered being able to add it in the future. I would argue also that if you have an island and it's unfinished underneath it, or a crawl space and you could get access to it, I would argue that you could get underneath and up into it, that could meet that provision. That is something you'll have to talk about with your AHJ to make a decision, okay? So that's something that y'all all have to work out with your AHJ in order to see what they're okay with as far as having that future provision there, okay? Now, as far as the location, let's say you are putting one, right? You choose to put one, okay? I'm also noticing, Russ, your question looks like it's 4 questions long. I'm going to encourage you to submit that to paulabernathy.com because we have 1 hour here, and the topic is peninsulas. And so I do encourage questions, but this seems like you want to learn something in that lesson. So that is something that you submit to paulabernathy.com. That's a multi. We'll look at it, but that's a multi-part question. Probably not the best type of question for coffee hour because we only have an hour, that type of thing. So you know, it looks like that's four questions that you've added. Although we'll look at it, but again, I'm just saying if I don't get to it, it's probably something you should submit to paulabernathy.com. All right, so receptacle. I just saw it coming by, and I'm sitting there going, this dude he's got an issue you're running into somewhere, and he wants an answer for his issue. I guess what I saw. All right, and that's a good opportunity for me to say that at paulabernathy.com, I do answer code questions, and it allows me to give you a response that we have obviously researched and be able to give you a good response, that type of thing. But we'll look at it, see if we can't answer it up front. All right, so let's see here. Let me get rid of this real quick then. We got to answer the lesson today first. Let's see here. Receptacle location. So if you put a receptacle outlet, and we're talking about the outlet again, folks. We're not talking about the device. So it could be a simplex, single receptacle in an outlet box. That's what we're saying. Receptacle outlet shall be located in one or more of the following. Okay, so under the 2023, if you choose to put one, where is it going to be? It says, okay, so it can be on or above, okay? Again, this is for island or peninsula. On or above, but not more than 20 inches above a countertop or work surface, okay? So on it, you can have a tombstone that sits on it, ugly as sin, okay? You can have the pop-outs that pop up out of the countertop, expensive as a firstborn child. You could have them up in the cabinet above, underneath. I don't know why I'm pixelating. Up in the cabinet above, as long as, again, you're not more than 20 inches above the countertop. So it might be in that underhang. If you have something like a Peninsula that has the cabinets come over it too, then maybe, how they have top cabinets and then they have the Peninsula and it's open, like looking into a living room. You might have a cabinet above it, may not. But as you can see, there's requirements, nothing here that says it can be below, which we've traditionally done forever. Okay. So it says in a countertop using receptacle outlet assembly is listed for use in countertop. So I can have it on it, sitting like a tombstone. I can have it above it. If I have a counter, a cabinet above it. Okay. I can have it in the countertop that pops up, as long as that is listed for the use. It's not a relocatable power tap, okay, which has a cord on it, and you just plug it into a receptacle that they mount under the counter. No, that's a relocatable power tap. It has to typically be hardwired. It's going to be listed for this application, and they're going to be expensive, $300 or $400 a piece. Okay, well, it's your customer. If that's what they're willing to pay for, it's fine. And then it says, in a work surface using receptacle outlet assemblies listed for use in work surfaces or listed for use in countertops. So you'll have some that are designed that are built into it. And again, if they're listed for use in the countertops, they're not something that you aftermarket added, then it's perfectly fine. All right. To have those. Now, that is what we have. What does Anthony say to me? What do you say? Hold on, let me show you. Oh, Paul, an hour? You know dang well you're long. That's true, but I try to be good stewards of people that come for the coffee hour, right? That type of thing. Try to be a good steward. All right, so now that is the code requirement for the 2023 National Electrical Code. All right, so the next thing that people look at is say, okay, well, what's coming for the 2026? Is there going to be anything that helps this, right? Anything that kind of gives a little relaxation? Okay, so here is what is proposed. Okay, if I can get my mouse there. Here's what is proposed for the 2026 currently. Here's what is proposed. It says if provided to serve the island or peninsular, all this looks the same. Okay, doesn't look like any key difference here. Now let's look at the locations. What do the locations say down here? Okay, it says receptacle outlet locations. It says receptacle outlet locations shall be located in one or more of the following: on or above, but not more than 20 inches above. Okay, that didn't change. In a countertop using receptacle outlet assemblies listed for use in countertops. Okay. It says in a work surface. Okay, that don't look like that has changed any on this. Let's see here. I'm just trying to see where, if anything enhanced anything. Okay, so that is the locations. Now it goes in and seems to add something called receptacle outlets locations prohibited. It says required and permitted receptacle outlets installed. Let me get rid of this deletion here. This is a little cleaner language here. It says required and permitted receptacle outlets installed in a location that is accessible outside a cabinet or wall surfaces that are below the countertop or work surface shall comply with the following. Okay, so this right here seems to give the receptacle. Now, the wording up here has changed a little bit. It says, if provided to serve the island or peninsula countertop or work surface, receptacle outlets shall be installed in accordance with 210.52C3, that's this one, and 210.52C4. Okay, all right, there you go. So it says this and this. Okay, let's see here. So on or above, not more than 20. Countertop using receptacle outlet assembly is listed. Okay. In a work surface using receptacle outlet assembly is listed. Okay. I think this is still it's stupid. It is still stupid. The ruling is still stupid. So basically what it's saying is, it says and here. So this is the prohibited area. So it says required and permitted receptacle outlets installed in a location that is accessible outside a cabinet or wall surface. Okay, so not inside the cabinet. That are below the countertop and work surface shall comply with the following. Receptacle outlets shall not be installed on adjacent walls extending from the base cabinet within 24 inches. And it says receptacle outlets beneath countertops shall not be located within 24 inches of the countertop or the work surface. Okay. Exception: receptacle outlets installed in a drawer shall be permitted to be installed below countertop or work surfaces. Okay. Yeah, that's going to take some work. So we're going to see, this has got to go through the NITMAM I think this language here, I think the code panel is totally screwed up in the head when it comes to this. And I think that code panel 2 is simply not doing anybody any service the way this thing is structured. This is a work in progress. So if this is not what the code's going to be, it's going to be what they're looking at. And this has still got to go through another review. So let's see if we hide all of this text. And let's go up here. We hide some text here. And let's see here. I'm just trying to see if hiding anything clarifies it. Okay. So this is still the location. Looks like they didn't change anything. There was talk of it, but it looks like it didn't make it. Let's see here. I don't know if I can go back to the first draft report. Hold on. Let me go back real quick. I want to look at something in the first draft. Bear with me, guys. This is when it first got submitted. This is for 2026 that people are coming in saying, what the hell is he talking about? And we're just looking to, I'm just trying to see if there was any language change. And okay, so here, so then we have the locations that you can install it, right? And then it went on to say outlets locations prohibited. Okay, shall not be installed on cabinet. This is a very stupid structure. Somebody that submits a NITMAM for this has to clean this up. This is very stupid code language. You start off by saying where the receptacle outlet can be, right? And you give all this information, and then you're going to give receptacle outlet location prohibited. And then it's going to tell you that it required and permitted receptacle outlets shall not be installed on cabinet sides or wall surfaces. Okay, but this is the locations where you can put it. And you have nothing in here that says that it can be on the side, right? Or below. Then you come down here and say, oh, well, you have locations that are prohibited. It says required or permitted receptacle outlets shall not be installed on. So this is general, okay? Looks like this is just a general to countertop spaces. It just looks like it has nothing to do with the island or peninsula. This one is referenced down here, and then this is also referenced. It's very stupid language. I'll have to look at it. I got to come up with a NITMAM, since this is really poor language. Okay, so. That was what I was afraid of. I was afraid that I would go look at it, and I'm going to have to look at it deeper. I was afraid I'd go look at 2026 and really get discouraged in what the code panel's doing there, because it is. I don't like it. I don't like you tell me where I can put a receptacle outlet on or above, and then you have prohibited areas, and then you proceed to tell me what's prohibited, which is general. In a kitchen, let's say, is because it looks very general. And why I say it's general, by the way, let me take you back here real quick. Let me tell you why I say it's general. Because you have this requirement, which is subdivision 2, and then 3, and then 4. This is 2026, by the way. We're just looking at 2026 proposed. Is you have this wording here, and it makes reference here, and it says, shall be installed in accordance with this and this, okay? So this tells you where it has to be. And this is telling you where it says required and permitted receptacle outlets shall not be installed on the cabinet sides or wall surfaces that are below countertops and work surfaces. Required and permitted receptacle outlets shall not be installed on adjacent walls, yada, yada, yada. Then it has an exception down here that gives no guidelines, for example, to not being below 12 inches, overhangs. So that tells me that it is not particularly germane to any of this. So it's just very muddy wording. And so somebody can argue and say, but is this saying that I can put it on a drawer on below the countertop? Okay, which here it says that the receptacle outlet location has to be where? On or above. Okay. And they're saying, well, down here, they're talking about prohibited locations. And it says the required and prohibited receptacles shall not be installed on the cabinet sides, yada, yada, yada. And then proceeds to give me an exception that says receptacle outlets installed in a drawer shall be permitted to be installed below the countertop surfaces. But that's in the drawer. Okay, so if I cut it into the face of the drawer, then it's allowing me to take a drawer and sacrifice it to cut a receptacle outlet in there, and then that would be permitted. Doesn't say anything about that drawer has to be fixed. It could be open. So if I have cables running through it, you're going to have this cable is exposed in a drawer. It doesn't say that the drawer has to be fixed in place. It's just muddy as hell. I don't get it. The code panel 2 did no service there. Okay. Wow, that one is muddy as hell. That's going to cause so many problems that people aren't going to know how to interpret that one because the rule says that I can't be for the island and peninsula, but then the rule says I can follow both C3 and C4. C4 is the prohibited location, right? So it's basically first tells you can't do something, but then it turns around and says you can't install it. But then the exception says, yeah, but we'll let you put it in a drawer. All right. In the drawer, on the drawer, a fixed drawer. Can somebody run a cable through the actual drawer and secure it to the side of the drawer so that drawer moves? You see where I'm going with that? There can be so many ways that people are going to screw this up, and it's not good it's not good code language for the installer. It sucks. Hey, I said it. Code panel 2, that one sucks. There's no direction there. You either want receptacle outlets on an island or you don't. And in 2023, you clearly don't. Adding this back in 2026, the way that you're writing it, it's totally stupid. Okay, I'm better now. Orendekyo. Okay, enough of that shit. Let's see here. Let's see if I can go back to Russ's and see what Russ is asking. All right, Russ, let's see what we're looking at here. Because I'm off of that Peninsula shit. That's the stupidest damn code rule I've ever seen. All right, in 240.4b, the code allows us to use an exercise up rule. Yes, it does. Above the ampacity conductor being protected. Yes, it does. But you have some caveats you got to meet. Can't be supplying a branch circuit with 2 or more receptacles. That would be a duplex. And it can't, obviously, the ampacity doesn't correspond with the overcurrent device. Point made. And as long as you're not, the next size up doesn't exceed 800 amps, right? So you have all those little caveats, right? Now, it says, how does this mesh with the other code sections giving limitations to ampacity? Not sure what you mean, Russ, because there are certain areas in the code that specifically tell you that you can't use the next size up. For example, feeder taps. It specifically tells you in 240.21b that you can't use the next size up. Point blank. It tells you right in there, black and white. Secondary conductors, 240.21c. It tells you black and white that you can't use 240.4b. So the code is written like this. You can use it unless they tell you can't do it. Okay? So that's my answer to that one, Russ. Let's see here. Is there a maximum distance for fishing? Well, it looks like it, if you go back and if we go look at 334, I'm assuming you're talking NM cable. I'm assuming that's what you're fishing, but it would apply otherwise. Let's see here. So if we look at securing and supporting, and we look at, and we're in the 2023, by the way, and we're looking at it, and then you go down here, and it's unsupported. So it says non-metallic sheet cable shall be permitted to be unsupported where the cable is fished between axes. So it does not give a length distance on this. Okay. So, you know, a lot of times I think what we're looking at is it's how much are you really going to fish? You're going to be limited by certain things like top plates. You're going to be limited by certain things in fishing anyway. So you're going to be limited to some point anyway. But I don't see anything on here when it comes to non-metallic sheath cable. I don't see any limitation on that. And for those that fish MC cable, let's see here, and unsupported cables. All right, it says it is fishing between access points or concealed spaces of finished buildings or structures, and supporting is unpractical. This is 6 foot limitation here is different, okay? And that's accessible ceiling, yada, yada, yada. And then, of course, here, interlocked is specific to interlocked, not exceed 3 feet from the last point where it's secured to the equipment where flexibility is necessary. So this is only in a situation, not in an open ceiling, not in accessible ceiling. This is, again, where you might cut the finished wall and you fish something down to get from point A to point B. I don't see a distance length on it, if that answers your question. I don't see anything in the code that demands distance length. That answers your question. Russ with another one says, for example, okay, I think this is tied to the other one. For example, 6.515 requires the EV charger to have 125% rating on the circuit, but 240.4 allows for the use. Yeah, it does allow for you to use the least, but that's for the overcurrent protection, right? You still cannot load a conductor more than its ampacity rating. So we get a lot of rules where it tells us to go up to 125%, right? And we will follow for branch circuits, for example, because so even though you're in 625, it has its own rules. You still have other rules you have to follow. You still have rules in 210 you got to follow as the branch circuit. You still have those type of things you have to meet, right? So I could have a conductor and I size it to 125%, right? And then I'm going to put it on an overcurrent protective device. But I may have a conductor, unless something prohibits it in 625.41, which we can go look at. Then I would say, as long as you're not if a conductor's good for, let's say, 18 amps, right, and you terminate it on a 20 amp, I don't know why I'm pixelating. You terminate it on a 20 amp overcurrent device, as long as the load doesn't exceed, the calculated load doesn't exceed the rating of the conductor, then essentially you're still protecting that conductor, okay? It's still fine, and that's the whole principle behind that. So we do that all the time. I'll give you a good example is we also have many times where we're taking something that's considered a continuous load, 16 amp continuous load, for example. So something's considered, it says 16 amps, right? So we'll take 16 amps times 1.25. And that can, and so that is 16 if it's a continuous load times 1.25, and that is 20 amps. So that is very convenient, right? To do an application, but we do that all the time. Use the next size up rule to be able to do that, and except where it's prohibited. Let's see here. Good morning, Portland, Oregon. Let the pints of coffee flow. Yep. I have a tendency to cause people to have to drink. If coffee is your drink of choice, that works. Let's see. Okay, Russ, your continued question here. If it takes installation of 60 amp rated EV charger at 55 amps, 6.3 Romex, boy, this is the constant conversation that we have that seems to be everybody wants to talk about using non-metallic sheath cable for an EV charger. It seems like it never ends. Okay. So, and I'm not sure why that topic is that hard to grasp, but we'll go back. So, non-metallic sheath cable is forced to be locked at what? It's going to be locked at 60 degrees, although you can use a 90 for adjustment and corrective purposes, right? So, if we go to the code and we look at the NEC, again, so here's the ampacity. I'll pop this table up. We can see the majority of it. We'll be over here, okay? And I'll pin this header. All right, so a 6 gauge is good for 55 amps, okay? So in that scenario, you're going, okay, well, that's the scenario, but you're limited to 60, okay? So one of the problems we do for the adjustment and corrective purposes, and I got to get rid of this because it's in my face, there's an examples where you can't exceed the ampacity of the conductor, right? And so in a scenario where it's like, if the load is going to be less, then you could terminate it, although 334.80 tells us that you can never exceed the rating of the conductor to be protected. So you typically would not use a next size up rule for that. But I'm trying to think of an example that I see really what I see. Let's see. I think the example I see is typically those EV chargers level 2 are like 48 amps, right? That type of scenario. And also remind you that the other thing that comes into play is typically 240.4b number 1 does not allow the next size up to be used on receptacle circuits, right? So this is an EV charger. Okay, you might say, okay, well, it's a single receptacle. Well, one of the things that you're bound by is the manufacturer's instructions, what they tell you you have to do, right? But if we look at the scenario, typically I see you're painting a scenario that doesn't really exist, because what you typically have is a 48 amp level 2. It's an industry standard 48 amps. So you're doing a bait type question, Russ. I get it. So 48 times 1.25 is 60 amps. So you're going to install a 60 amp overcurrent protected device because that's what the rules are, 125%, and that's probably what it's on what the manufacturer calls for. Okay. Well, in that scenario, what we have is, because we have a 60 amp overcurrent protected device, then we can't have a situation. What does that mean? That means that our conductors had to be sized at 125%. And if we size that conductor at 125%, then that is 60 amps. So that means that I have to have a non-metallic sheath cable. Because if you look at 645, here's what it says. So let's go look at it real quick so I can nail this one out for you. I'm just teasing you, Russ. Relax. All right, so let's go at 645, or 625, excuse me. 625.41, okay? Okay, so this is what you're talking about. So check it out real quick. So this here is for overcurrent protection, okay? So it says overcurrent protection for feeders and branch circuits applying EVSE and WPTE, which is the wireless type. You know how you take your phone, you know, and you put it over a charger, that type of thing, and it charges it wirelessly. That's that kind of, you'll be able to drive your car over those things, okay? Including bidirectional EVSE, which again can also feed back to the house, okay? Shall be sized for continuous load and shall have a circuit rating, which is the rating is based on the overcurrent device, a rating of not less than 125% of the maximum load of the equipment, okay? And again, it says where non-continuous loads are supplied from the same, so that's if you have other loads as well. So it's not just supplying the EV, it might have other loads that are associated with it. Then you follow the rules as you always would. We take 100% of the non-continuous load and 125% of the continuous load. Okay, so it could be a feeder, by the way, that is not just doing the EV charger, but something else. Okay, now that's where you get the 125. So the overcurrent protection, in our case, and I think that's what your situation was with Russ with your 60 amp EV, is typically it's 48 times 1.25, and that's where the 60 is. So you have the 60. Okay, now getting down into the rating. Okay. So when you're talking about the rating, is the EVAs shall have sufficient rating to supply the load served, okay? And if you go down through all of these, unless you're going to be limiting the load, you're basing the circuit on the overcurrent protection, and we have to protect the conductor at its ampacity, right? Well, we're told that this what? For example, if you look at the example up here for the EV branch circuit, it says each outlet installed for the purpose of supplying EVSE greater than 16 amperes shall be supplied by an individual branch circuit. Okay. All right. And as you can see now, we have to do the overcurrent protective device at what? Okay. 125% of the rating, which is why we got to the 60. Okay. All right. So we typically take these EVs as a continuous load, right? So we're going to take whatever it is at 48, and the manufacturer tells you this too. Take that at 125%, and that means that I have to have a conductor that's good for what? 60 amps, because I took it at 125%. Well, that's why you can't use the NM cable at the rating you were looking at. That's why you can't use, if we go back to conductor sizes, this is why, and I'll pull this up here. This is why we can't use, right, in this scenario, 6. Now, can we use it if we can say, if we can use everything is rated for what? Okay, now, do we have any adjustment or corrections to take place? If you have some adjustment and corrections to take place, remember that 60, even at the 60, is still 55 amps, which is the actual load. So is it a possibility if you have any adjustment or corrections that have to take place, then you would be adjusting from the 90, right? And as long as the actual load doesn't exceed that of the 60, then you can get away with the 6 gauge. Does that make sense? So if you look at 334 and you have to do some adjustment or correction purposes, and I'll assume that in your case you are. And if you look right here, it says, okay, the ampacity of NM cable shall be determined in accordance with 310.14. The ampacity shall not exceed that of the 60 rating, okay? The 90-degree rating shall be permitted to be used for adjustment and corrections, provided that the final calculated ampacity does not exceed that of the 60. So that's not really using the next size up rule. That's just using the allowances here. So in this case, are you making an adjustment or correction? Because the actual load is 48 amps. But if you do it at 125% for continuous load, then that's going to put you up into the 60. And of course, in that case, we're just using NM, and there's probably not going to have any adjustment or correction to take place. So you're going to end up protecting that conductor at the ampacity that you calculate when you're sizing it, as that's 125%. So that's where you size your conductor. And then, of course, that's going to be okay because it's going to be on a 60. That's going to be okay as well. But irony is it, if you do have some adjustment and corrections that take place, right, then you might be able to play around with it and see what you can do. I don't know if that answers your question, Russ, but again, most people run into this question with the non-metallic sheath cable. And the biggest one that I get from these folks is they want to run, hold on here. They want to run, let's get back to the ampacity real quick. They want to run this. Or they want to run an 8.3. And the problem with the 8.3 is because of this, okay? Now, 6. Again, if you're using MC cables or you're pulling single conductors, and you don't have an issue, right? But when it comes to 6, it is good for 55 amps under it, but it doesn't work when I'm required to size my conductors at 125%, unless I'm using 210.19, and I'll show you that. Just for craps and giggles. Unless I'm doing this. So here's the rules that we were talking about for branch circuit, because that is a branch circuit. Okay, it says where the branch circuit supplies continuous loads or any combination of continuous and non-continuous loads, the minimum branch circuit conductor size shall have an ampacity not less than non-continuous load plus 125% of the continuous load. Okay. Okay. And then, of course, you've got the minimum size branch circuit conductor shall have an ampacity not less than the maximum load to be served after the application of any adjustment or correction. So you could have a situation where you have an adjustment or correction that takes place, and then you only have to size the conductor what? based on the actual load, which is continuous load, but it's the actual load. Like the 48 amps is the actual continuous load. Okay, we're just following the rules and sizing it at 125% and then picking a conductor. And then also in 210.20, it's the same scenario for the overcurrent device, right? Same scenario, continuous and non-continuous loads. So if the manufacturer already dictates what it's to be treated as a continuous load, then you do it. The question is that a continuous load or not? And so that becomes the question, and this is a 2023, by the way, that becomes a question, is that a continuous load? Is it going to be pulling its maximum output, right, for 3 hours or more? Or does the NEC tell you to treat that as a continuous load, okay? So that's the type of scenario you want. And if you read down here, it's telling you the overcurrent device for feeders and branch circuits, okay, shall be sized for continuous duty and shall have current rating not less than 125% of the maximum load to be served. So at the end of the day, that's typically why a manufacturer will dictate the sizes. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense or not. Okay, just picking on you, Russ. What else? What else we got here? Let's see here. Adam says, I'm English, and this article sounds like a bunch of drunk people. Are you talking about the 625? Or are you talking about, you're probably talking about the receptacle for the island. Yeah, it is a bit gibberish. It is a bit gibberish. Russ says, I hate inconsistency in verbiage and sentence, the sentence structure between CME. Yeah, it kind of changes. Only thing I can say is that you can submit public inputs and public comments to try to get things. I will tell you that the 2029, they're not going to change the code language, but the structure is supposed to be a little bit better. You know what I'm saying? The structure is going to be supposedly a little bit better in that. And hold on for a second. Let's see. Let me type this in here for you. There we go. All right. I was trying to see if I had something I could bring up. Hold on here. I was going to see if there's something I could bring up. That I wanted to bring up. I don't see it. I was looking for something I could bring up that might have explained something a little more. And bear with me for a second because I was looking at it and I wanted to see if I had it somewhere. And I can't seem to find. I had a little article that I wanted to do, and I'm looking for it, and I can't see it. All right, bear with me. I had an article on something that, I don't know if I didn't write the article, but it was a really good article. I was going to share it, and I was going to share it in the chat part of it, but I can't see it. Okay, anyway. It doesn't matter, but I think the important part for your sizing for the NM is you need to realize that you're required to size it as a continuous load. And so, the best thing I can give you is this part right here, the rating. It just says the EVs. And again, most of the manufacturers are going to give it for you, but the EV charger load shall be considered a continuous load for the purpose of this article. So, and I'm not highlighting this. Somebody asked me, do I highlight link? I'm not. All I'm doing is dragging my mouse over it. And it's not really highlighted. But that's what causes the problem, is that we're forced to size these circuits as continuous loads. So in your case, Russ, the NEM is good for 55 amps, but we're required to size it for continuous load anyway. So we're required to take that 48 amps that is the continuous load that's probably on the nameplate. And I do that at 125%, and that's 60. So I have to have a conductor that's good for 60. And I'm going to terminate that on an overcurrent device that's 60. So I'm all good. The problem that everybody falls into with this NM, and I'm okay with people running NM. Obviously, we make NM. I don't have a problem with it at all. I think the problem with it is when they look at it and they go to the ampacity tables, like here, again, they get pigeonholed into the fact that this conductor is only good for 55 amps under the 60. And I was told to treat it as a continuous load. And if it's 48 amps, then I end up saying, okay, well, I got to do 48 times 125%. I need a conductor that's good for 60 amps. And this is where they get screwed. And they want to use this column. I get it. But at the end of the day, you can't, because 334.80 is going to tell you that you can't exceed the values of the 60, even though you can do an adjustment and correction. And we can play with all those numbers at the end of the day. But it typically is protecting a conductor at its ampacity. Now, the argument is, okay, you say it's 55 amps, right? That's what the conductor's rated for. Okay? It's if you did the load calculation and the amps you need doesn't correspond, then you're able to go to the next standard size, right? Well, this one is rated for 55 amps. And if I go look at, I love these discussions. If I go to look at 4 there, okay, and I go here, okay, then I see what you're pointing out is, see, well, you got a 60, so that conductor is good for 55 amps. But that is only when we're doing a calculation and we come up with an ampacity of a conductor that we need. You get me what I'm saying? I just want to make sure that you're clear on that. Is that if I do something and I do an adjustment to a conductor's ampacity and it comes back at 56 amps now, okay? Well, there isn't a breaker rated for 56 amps. So then I'm able to go to the next standard size overcurrent protected device. Okay, so that's amps. It's not like I can say, oh, let me go to 55, right? And then I can protect it at 60 in that scenario. Basically, when we use that rule, it's basically we've done a calculation and it doesn't correspond, right? So in our case, there is a 60 amp overcurrent protected device, and I'm required to take that load at 125%. I'm just talking about your EV example. I'm required to take that load at 125%. Then I couldn't even be in the 55 on the column C. I couldn't just say, oh, why can't I use that? No, because I've been forced in EV to do it at 125%. And that's the same thing I've been forced for the overcurrent device. Both of them equal 60. So I have to have a conductor that's good for what? 60. You get me? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So now if I did a calculation on a conductor, right, and I come back in the ampacity, it just comes back and it doesn't correspond, and I got to have a conductor. The conductor could be much larger, right? The conductor could be big, could handle way more current. But when I'm looking at it and if I'm looking at it and I say, well, I got a conductor that now after the adjustment and correction, this is the ampacity, right? And if it doesn't correspond to an overcurrent device, then I'm allowed to go to the next standard size as long as it meets all those little caveats, that type of thing. But in our case with the EV, it already tells us in 625.42, I believe, to treat it as a continuous load. It already tells me that my overcurrent protected device has to be at 125%. So at the end of the day, it's a 60 amp breaker, and I have to have 60 amp rated wire because of what it said in 625. Okay, so yeah, there are occasions where. Oh, and beautiful thing also, Russ, is that we understand the structure of the code. Chapter 1 through 4 applies generally, and 5, 6, and 7 can supplement and modify the NEC, right? Chapters 1 through 7 can be modified. So 625 does its own thing. Same as you get up into pools, 680 does their own thing. Says things to do which may be adverse to something that may be down in chapter 2 or chapter 3, that type of thing. one of the good examples of this, give you an example, is for appliances. You know, we're looking at certain things in 422, for example, which we're going to we're hopefully get rid of the list of those appliances, like the ranges and ovens and whatever that are GFCI protection in 210.8. We're looking to take control of that. I don't know if it's going to happen, but we're looking to take control of that in Code Panel 17. So what that means is they'll be removed out of 210.8, and they'll allow it to be under 422.5. And if that's the case, I believe that we have agreed to remove, I believe we've agreed to remove the requirement for GFCI protection on ranges, ovens, all that type of stuff for the 2026 edition. We'll see. But that's, my recollection, we just voted. And that's my recollection. That's what we agreed to do. And so, anyway, we'll see how that works out. I can look and see, by the way. Let's see here. Let me look, since I'm already over time anyway. Let's see here. As Anthony pointed out, that I never seem to follow my time anyway. So let's see here. If I'm looking to see if that, let me look in, it might not have been updated on here yet. So let me just look at 210.8. I'm sure it hasn't been updated yet. But here's 210.8. Okay, let's go down to D. Okay, see all these appliances, these extra ones that were added, which are these right here, these type of things. So that's the way it is right here. And what it looks like, and I could be wrong, I think we just voted. And it looks like what's going to happen is we're going to go up here in 422. And it looks like, you see where they're not under the list here? You see that, where it stops at dishwasher? Oops, I'm not even sharing the screen, so you can't see what the hell I'm looking at. So right here, this is the 2026 proposed language. And under 210.8, it was, I'll show you that again real quick. 210.8, y'all remember seeing all of this right here? Remember these here that were added? And there's a lot of compatibility arguments, right? Well, what we've looking in the Code Panel 17, I believe that Code Panel 2 wants to relinquish control of this. Okay, we'll see how it washes out. I'll keep you updated. And that means that it will fall under Code Panel 17. And if that's the case, here you see what we did under Code Panel 17, right here. Notice that we didn't add those other items. So we didn't follow what they did in Code Panel 2. Code Panel 17 didn't follow it. So I believe that Code Panel 2 is going to relinquish, because these are about the appliances. And it really has no reason to be in 210.8. It really, the appliances, if GFCI is required, it really should be up here, okay, in 422, which is appliances. So if they relinquish us, I believe that we just did a ballot vote after the meeting, just last week. And we're not going to include those items. Now, what I would like to see, if there's a real concern, and I think we're going to lose it this time, if there's a real concern about these appliances and GFCI protection, and some people argued that it was a real concern, then, and it wasn't, they didn't worry about the compatibility issue. They just said it was a real concern. The problem with it is that there is still people that are having issues and ranges and ovens and all kinds of stuff. No different than the same issues we had, remember, when it was required for the air conditioning units outside? Same issues, and we had to have that delay, and they delayed it even more. Same issue. That leakage current, same issue. And manufacturers of things like ovens and ranges and all that were never required to be held to such strict leakage values. Now, they have their own leakage values that follow, but there's issues. And if there's issues with compatibility, we should have done the same thing. It's too late now, I think. Well, I guess there's a knitman to go. Somebody should submit it. We could have done a date in the future, right? We could have said effective January 1st, 2029, right? And that gave the manufacturers time to do what? Solve the issue, right? So we could have given them time, and but again, what I think will happen is they'll fix it anyway, correct it anyway, and it'll come back in the 2029 edition. If Anthony, if you're on a code panel, you'll be dealing with it if you're on 17. And I think it'll come back, and they'll want to add it again because people who did report some evidence. So anyway, that is that. Okay. So anything I talk about today that wasn't clear? Russ, we were talking about the drawer for the receptacle outlet. He goes, yeah, hit them with a 110.12 violation if they hack up the face of the drawer. I don't know. 110.12, I think, we might be reaching for that one. Let's see here. 110.12. Let's see if we could apply that to the countertop. Let's see here. Execution of workmanship. Only going to apply to electrical equipment, Russ. So I would like to throw that one at them, but here it says mechanical execution of work, electrical equipment shall be installed in a professional. All right. So I don't know if the drawer being hacked up will give them anything, but if they, I don't know. That's that one where it's hard to enforce, right? That's that one, but like, what's, and it changed the language, by the way. Workmanlike manner, that you notice that's gone, right? You notice it says installed in a professional and skilled manner, right? But yet down in the reference for the information note, it all comes from the workmanship and electrical instruction, the good workmanship standard. So again, we removed the workmanship in here, but still reference the NECA document, NECA 1, which is not enforceable. It's just an informational note. So that puts, hard to pull that 110.12 one on people. Now, these are easier for unused openings. Integrity means beating the hell out of the wire or cutting the wire up or damage something during the installation, or plaster or paint or whatever can inhibit the use of a product, like if they spray all over the breaker, the bus and all this. I get it. And then we have the cables or conductors. Obviously, they have to install in such a manner that won't damage them. Bending the MC too tight, all these other types. We have bending radius requirements and that we have to follow, but still, this gives you another one that you can cite for that. But yeah, about the drawer, I don't know. I would think that if they beat the drawer to hell, the homeowner is probably going to step in and say, dude, really? I'm paying how much for this house? Yeah, and they're not going to let the builder off the hook. I can sure on that one. So anyway, hopefully everybody enjoyed coffee hour. We talked about a lot of things. If I had to summarize what we talked about, obviously in a 2023, you cannot have a receptacle outlet below the island or peninsula countertop. It has to be on or above, not more than 20 inches. We got it. You got to have a provision there for the future. Okay, whether it's a box, fine. Whether it's a raceway leading over, fine. Whether you can get to it from underneath, could be argued that that's fine. As long as the circuit is down there, they can get up there. Can't be the panel upstairs, unfinished downstairs, and then the island. Then they're going to argue, well, you're not putting a provision because now you got to get it for the panel down and over. Well, hell, we could do that anytime. So I don't know that one's going to fly. But if you take the circuit down and put it in a junction box underneath the floor, unfinished basement maybe, crawl space or whatever, maybe that meets it. You can drill right up and put it in. Or maybe you just run the circuit over there and put it in a junction box. That might meet it. In the 2026, I don't know how it still could do the same thing. Put a provision there for it. The only thing that they're trying to change is where you could possibly put this receptacle outlet. And that wording, the way it's wording, is total muck up. It's so confusing. I'm going to have to sit and stop and read it even more. I'm going to have to stop and dissect it because it just looks like it's saying, here's where you put them. And then, oh, by the way, in those areas where you can put it or you're prohibited to put it, which would be below the countertop, we'll let you can't do it But then we'll have an exception that says, oh, you can do it, but you got to put it in the drawer. That seems just stupid. So I don't, that's not going to give any relief to anybody, really, to be honest with you. And who's going to sacrifice a drawer? Could have done that anyway before. So I believe that it should be still allowed to be on the side, not more than 12 inches, not more than an overhang of 6 inches. It's been serving us forever. So if you're going to allow me to put it in a drawer, okay, well, then you must say something like it has to be a fixed drawer. Otherwise, I can see somebody running NM, running MC, running something up through the drawer to put it in the cabinet, and that drawer still can come in and out, and people are going to put stuff in there, and it could damage the cable. It just seems like a mess. It's just nobody's thought very much about it. And maybe I'm looking at it wrong. I probably am looking at it wrong. Let's say I pray that I'm looking at it wrong. Okay, maybe I just hadn't had enough coffee today. That's a distinct possibility. There's no bourbon in there, so can't do good code until I've had a little bit of that in there, right? Let's see. Now, what else did we talk about? The next size up rule in 240.4b, as long as you meet the caveats, you can use it where it's prohibited elsewhere in the code. Okay. Also, there's other areas of the code that may supplement or modify or change something in chapters 1 through 7. In this case, we saw that for EV chargers, it specifically says that you do the overcurrent at 125%. Okay. It says that you treat the circuit, whether it's on 3 hours or more continuous at maximum output. It's irrelevant because 625.42 said you're going to treat these circuits as continuous loads. Okay. So in our case, we're not going to be able to worry about what it says in 240.4b here. We're going to say, okay, well, this charger is 48 amps. It's a continuous load. That's without doing the 125, right? It's like, okay, it's the continuous load first. It's 48 amps. Okay, but then the code saying use size for continuous loads in 210.19 is basically you're going to do what? You take whatever the load is, that is an actual load, is considered continuous, and do it at 125%. That's what we would treat it as a continuous load. We go back and look at the definition of continuous load. That's what, it's that. So we're going to do that at 125%. So we took that 48 amps times 125% is 60 amps. That corresponds with the overcurrent device that was required as well. So at the end of the day, we have to have a conductor that's rated for what? 60 amps. And so to find one that's rated for 60 amps, we go to 310.16, and that's what's going to put us in the sizing that we need to find, if you want to use non-metallic sheet cable, by the way, that type of thing. All right. Makes sense? All right. Okay. I guess that's it. What else did we talk about? Nothing else. All right, folks, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. We'll see you tomorrow. Again, you can always recommend your topics by going to paulabernathy.com. Always feel free to go there and tell me some different topics you want to talk about. I love just talking. That's the point of coffee hour for me, is to have these discussions and go anywhere. Let's just talk in the morning. It's not designed to be a code lesson. It's not designed. We give lessons, but again, it's just to get your morning started. You can bring up topics. Glad we could actually get to your topic, Russ, because I think I glanced at it and realized that it is definitely a topic that we could discuss here. And so again, I apologize, Russ. I was just kind of glancing. It looked like it was 3 different questions, and I was thinking like, whoa, okay. If that's a serious multi-part thing, then submit it over to paulabernathy.com. But remember, you can also request topics. Any topic, guys. Just get active. Go to paulabernathy.com. It only takes you a few seconds. Type it in. Boom. Hit it. And we can have a coffee hour topic. Whatever you want. Okay? All right. Secret of life. We can do that too. Don't have the answer to that, but we can muddle through it. And we'll do it together. All right, folks. All right, everybody. God bless. Have a great week. Stay safe. Don't get hurt. And remember, we're only on this rock one time. So get as much knowledge as you can. At the end of the day, family always comes first. And just make it safe out there. All right? All right, folks. Till next time, stay safe. God bless. We'll catch you on tomorrow's coffee hour in some odd minutes, because as Anthony pointed out, I have a tendency not to stay on time anyway, which is true. He is very accurate with that. Till next time, folks, stay safe.